Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Custom Material webinar. My name is Nick, and I will be doing the presentation with you today. Just like all of our previous webinars, everybody will be on mute. So if you do happen to have any questions at any point during our class, please feel free to go ahead and type them into the questions and answers section in the Zoom panel. And at the end of the class, I will go through and answer any questions that may have come up. Also, at the end of the class, I will be sending out an email that's going to contain a document that's going to cover everything that we're going to be looking at in today's class. Should you happen to have any questions while going over that document, you can reach out to our support department, and you can reach them through either phone or email, and they will be happy to help you out with any questions you might have. Again, today's class is going to be on custom materials. So in today's class, we're going to be looking at some detailed information about creating custom materials that can be used or applied to elements within Envisioneer. We're going to be looking at how to source materials off of the internet. We're also going to be looking at how to edit the materials. And then we're going to be adjusting the materials properties for use within the Envisioneer application. So first, let's talk about sourcing materials. Now, depending on what you're going to be using the material for, this will help dictate where you can source that material or that file from. If you're looking for a specific material from a manufacturer, then you can find that image or texture on their website, or by simply searching online for a texture that closely matches what you're trying to replicate. Using a search engine like Google and entering in key phrases like seamless texture will help narrow down your search results. If you're trying to match an existing finish, you can take a picture of the finish with your camera and then save that image to a computer so that it can be edited. When sourcing your textures, you want them to be in either a JPEG or a PNG format, unless you're creating a transparent image. Then you should be saving that type of texture in a BMP bitmap or in a PNG format. Once you have found the material you want to use, you can then save the material to your textures folder on your hard drive. So first, let's go ahead and try and find a material. And as you can see, I have a model up on our screen here that's showing a cement board siding type of material. So I want to change this to be a different board and batten type material. And I want to use something that's going to be more reflective of what the client is asking for. So I'm going to go up to and search on Google, and I'm just going to type in board and batten. And then I'm just going to type in seamless texture. Now, if you want to get even more descriptive, you can type in other keywords. So if you know the exact color that you want for this board and batten, you can add that in here. So let's do a board and batten, and we'll do robin's egg blue, seamless texture. And what you're going to get is a list of different options, and you can go through and again try and find the option that you want to use. So I'm just going to go into images, and then here we can see we get a couple of different options. And this one here looks pretty good. So I'm going to grab this one here, and then I'm just going to right click on that image, and I'm just going to say save image as. And what this will do is it will give me the ability to save this. And I'm just going to put this on my desktop, and I'm just going to call this board and batten, and I'm just going to go robin's egg blue. So we're just going to go board and batten, and we'll just do robin's egg blue. So I'm giving it a unique name, and I'm saving it onto my desktop for right now. And then we're just going to hit save. So now I have that texture saved on my desktop. So I'm just going to minimize the internet there and my search engine. And now what we're going to do is we're going to open up that texture, but we're going to edit it. So when you've sourced the texture, you will now need to edit that material. When you apply material in Envisioneer, it copies it across the face of the receiving object. If the material is smaller than the object, it will continuously repeat the material to fill the face of the object. This can have some undesirable effects if the material has a definite edge that is going to be repeated across the face of the object, making the material appear fake. Once you have the material saved to your computer, you can start to edit it if needed to remove any parts of material that would make it not repeat nicely. If you have a photo editing software like Photoshop, you can open it in that application. If not, using Microsoft Paint will work just as well. The purpose of editing the material is to, one, make sure that when it is tiled, it will look seamless in your design. You do not want parts to be brighter than others or to have the edges of the texture visible when it is tiled. We also want the picture, so two, we want the picture of the material that needs to be cropped to remove any other elements that we don't want included. And then three, we need part of the material to be transparent. So if you are creating a material that does need to have some kind of transparency set to it, you will need to edit it. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up Microsoft Paint. So I'm just going to go and I'm just going to type into my search area here, Microsoft. Let's just do Paint. And that will open up the Paint application. Now all I need to do is open up the file. So we're going to go to File, Open. And then if you remember, we saved that to our desktop. So I'm just going to go up to my desktop here. And I'm just going to grab the board and batten Robin's Egg Blue. And we're going to say Open. So what we're going to see is this texture. Now I want to make sure that this texture looks and tiles correctly. So I want to make sure that I'm going to crop it in a way that is going to be reflective of what that material needs to look like. So as an example, what I would do here is I would go in and I would say, well, I can see I got a batten, a board, a batten, a board, a batten, a board. So it's going to keep repeating all the way across. So I want to make sure that this image either starts at a batten or starts at a board. And then on the end, I want it to either end at a batten or end at a board, which is going to be the opposite of whatever I start with. So in this case, I'm going to use the select option, and I'm just going to crop out an area that I want to use. So I'm going to create my marquee here. I'm left clicking and I'm holding on my keyboard right now. And I'm just going to stretch this across. And since I'm removing the first batten, because I want to make sure that I include that shadow there, I'm going to make sure that I go right to the end of this batten right there. So I've eliminated the first batten. So I'm starting at a board. So I'm going board, batten, board, batten, board, batten, board, and then my last one is going to be a batten. And as you can see, I'm including quite a few in here. And I'm going to try and keep it as close to a square as possible, but I don't need all the rest of this. Once I'm happy with that, I'm just going to say crop, and it's going to cut out the rest of that information. I no longer need any of that other information. I've now created a tileable texture that I can use for my wall material. So now all I have to do is go up and select Save. So now I've created that board and batten material. I've adjusted it so that it's going to be a tileable material. And now all I need to do is apply it to our drawing. Now, before we do that, I do want to make sure that we talk about the transparency. So if we go to our directory here, so I'm just going to go make sure I say File and Save, and then we're going to go File and Open. Now, on our computer, we're going to have our drive where we keep all of our materials. And depending on where you've installed it, it could be under your C drive or your D drive. I've actually placed mine, I do believe it is under C. Let me just double check. Program Data, Cadsoft, Envisioneer 16, and then you're going to have your textures folder. Now I'm going to back up here just for a moment. I just wanted to make sure that it was there. If you are following along and you do not have the program data option, it is probably because you have it turned off, because you have hidden files and folders disabled. To enable that, you're going to need to open up the Windows Explorer here, or File Explorer, and then under View, Options, View. So again, we're under File Explorer, View tab, Options, View tab. We want to make sure that where it says Hidden Files and Folders, we want to show hidden files, folders, and drives. We want to make sure that that is enabled. We can then just say OK, and then you'll see Program Data. And then under Program Data, you're going to find the Cadsoft folder, Envisioneer 16, and Textures. Now this is going to show you all of the textures. And what we want to do here is I want to open up a texture that has a magenta color in it. And what we're going to be looking for here is like a door. So we're just going to open up this door right here. So what this is creating is a bitmap image that has the appearance of the door leaf, but where the glass is, we've created a magenta color. Now, if I use the eyedropper on this, and I just take a look at the properties of that texture, and I just go edit colors, what you're going to see is that magenta color has a definite or defined RGB value, which is 255, 0, 255. What this means is anytime that Envisioneer sees this magenta color, it is going to make it transparent. So right now, with that area highlighted with that magenta color, when I add this into Envisioneer, it's going to see that and it's going to say, oh, that is a transparency mask. It is going to remove that, so it makes it look like you can see through that part of the texture. Again, this will only work if it's saved as a BMP or bitmap file or a PNG file. And it again has to be a magenta color using the RGB value of 255, 0, 255. And I'll show that in the model so you can see how that works as well. So it's going to cancel there, and I'm just going to close this down, and we're going to go back into our model. So now what we're going to do is we're going to be adjusting the materials properties. So once you have edited the texture file and saved it to your textures folder, you can now create a new texture within Envisioneer. In Envisioneer, you will be able to give the material a name and adjust the properties to reflect how it should be rendered. Adjusting these variables will help in achieving a photorealistic material. So we're going to go up, and again, in Envisioneer, we're going to select File, Catalogs, and we're going to go to our Library Manager. And then in the Library Manager, we're going to go to the Materials option. And depending on if you've been in here already or not, it should open to materials for you by default. But if you have been editing in your Library Manager, it will save the last place that you were working. So here we can see that mine is opening up in materials. If it is not opening up in materials on yours, you can simply go to libraries and just select materials. What we're going to do is we're going to scroll down to a section in our catalog. We're going to go to wood panels. And as you can see, when I open up wood panels, it's going to give me a list of all of the different wood panel textures that are already included in Envisioneer. And we're just going to add in a new one using that new texture that we've created. I'm just waiting for this to load here, so it's going to give it just a second to load up. Perfect. So now we can see all of the default materials that are already included in Envisioneer. So you can see they're named generically wood panel 1 and all the way through. As we scroll down in that list, you're going to see that there is probably going to be some other board and batten materials that you may have already added in. I'm going to add in a new one. I'm just going to say add material. And what this will do is it will, again, just allow you to create a brand new material. And again, we're just going to wait for that to load up. It's just taking its time here. Here we go. And then once you add in a new material, you're going to get the materials properties dialog box. And then underneath this properties dialog box, we're essentially just going to be adjusting the properties. So the first thing we want to do is we want to give it a name. So here we can see it adopted the naming convention of the last material that we used. So you can give it a unique name. We're going to change this to be board and batten. We're just going to say Robin's egg blue. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start to adjust the actual texture. Now, under the material type, this is where you can control how that material is going to be represented. So a generic option will give you the ability to adjust absolutely everything that is associated with that texture. We're going to leave our set to generic, and if you were adding in different types of materials, you could go through and change these to be using the different options in here. If you were to select diffuse, this would only allow you to adjust the texture itself, being it a color or a texture material, and adding in any kind of a bump map. If you wanted to do a Lampert, it would allow you to adjust not only the color and the texture and the bump, but you could also adjust the emissive and the opacity. And then Phong will allow you to, again, adjust not only the diffuse, the bump, the emissive, the opacity, but you can also adjust the specular levels. I'm going to keep mine set to generic, so I have the ability to adjust everything so you can see how that can actually take effect. So now, under generic, we need to now define what we're adding in. So under diffuse, you can add in a solid color, or you can add in a texture. We've already created a texture, so we want to add in a texture. So I'm going to select texture. I'm going to select the select button. Now, I didn't save mine to the textures folder. I saved mine to the desktop. So I'm just going to go up to my desktop, and I'm just going to grab that material. If you are going to be doing this, you're going to want to save it in your catalog so that it's always a part, or sorry, you want to save it into your textures folder so that it's always a part of the textures in your application. I'm just going to hit open. And what that does is it now creates a texture for us that we can see. Now, the next thing we want to take into consideration here is the actual tile height. So as you remember, we want to be able to tile this texture across our wall. So here, this texture is going to be tiled across the wall in our drawing. So how high do we want this texture to be? Well, I'm going to say I want that to be at least 10 feet tall. I may have walls that may be a little bit taller, but for the majority of my walls are probably going to be 8 to 10 feet tall. So a 10-foot height is a good measurement. If you want to err on the side of caution, you can just make it a 12-foot height, and then you won't have to worry about it. But again, it is completely up to you. The tile width is probably the more important option. We need to make sure we're defining how big we want these board and batten materials to take a look at. So if we're saying that each board is going to be a 6-inch reveal, and then we're going to have at least 1 inch of batten material, then we need to make sure we're adding these all up correctly. So if I take a look here and I'm saying, so we got 6, so that's going to be 1 foot right there. That's going to be 2 feet. But then I have 1, 2, 3, 4 battens. So we're looking at a 2 foot 4-inch batten and board width on this design. So I'm going to change this to be 2 foot 4 inches. And we're going to make sure we unlock that. So I did forget to change that. So as you saw, when I made that adjustment, I had the constrain option selected. And what this will do is no matter what I change, it's going to change the height as well. I don't need that to happen. And I'm just going to make mine 12 feet as well. So we're going to say we want it to be 12 feet by 2 foot 4 inches. To the right of that, you're going to see an option that shows tile vertically and tile horizontally, and they are both checked. We want to make sure that those are checked, so that way if we do need to tile this material, it will do so in both vertical and horizontal orientations. We don't have a magenta color assigned to this, so I want to make sure I have make magenta color transparent unchecked. If you have an object in your design and it is going to use magenta as an actual color, let's say you have a lamp or something in your design that is going to be using the magenta color of 255, you will want to make sure that it is also unchecked or it will become invisible. So only things you want to see through should have this box checked. And again, we'll look at that when I apply this to the door so you can see how that works. The texture intensity controls the brightness and the contrast of the texture itself. The values range from 0 up to 2, and you can go below that as well. So you can make those adjustments to go either from 0 all the way up to 2.0. And again, play around with it, see what's going to work best for you. I typically leave mine in the 0.8 range. And then if I need to fine tune it, I will come in and either bump that value up or down. So if I'm seeing blue affecting my scene, then I will adjust that value so it's a little bit higher so that it's not overpowering the scene itself. We're then going to say OK. And then what we're going to do is we can also apply a bump map. Now, adding in a texture for a bump map will raise the edges or the wrinkles you may want to take advantage of. This can be done in a couple of different ways. You can just reuse the exact same texture. So we can just say, I want to use that robin's egg blue texture. And I'll just go back up to my desktop. And we'll just select that robin's egg blue. And we want to make sure it's the same size. So again, we're going to make sure we unlock this. This is going to be 12 feet by 2'4". And then we're going to say OK. And then we can just use our bump scale. And you can use this value to bump it up or down to, again, show how you want that to look in your design. And this will just help accentuate the highs and the lows of the texture you're working with. And it will just give it a sense of depth when you're rendering. Now, alternatively, as you can see here, there is a type and there is an option for standard, and there is an option for normal. A normal map will give you basically it's an inverse image of the texture itself. This needs to be created. Some texture sources out there, if you were using a texture source, will give you not only the material in a JPEG, bitmap, PNG file format, but they will also give you a normal map. And you will want to make sure that you copy both the texture itself as well as the normal map, and then you can apply it to the texture. And I'll show you an example of this when I take a look at the brick so you can see how that is actually taking effect. But we don't have it for this, so we're just going to make sure it's set to standard, and we're just going to say that we're going to leave that as it is. So now under emissive, again, this is going to be a board and batten siding, so we're not going to have the, we're not going to need this to give off any kind of a light, but if you ever needed to create a texture, emissive option allows you to control how much light that the texture is going to give off. Opacity controls how transparent the texture is. Again, this is a siding material, so it's not going to be transparent. So we're going to have ours set to fully opaque. If you wanted to give the texture a bit of a gloss to it, you could adjust the glossy dull slider to, again, apply a bit of a gloss to it. We're going to keep ours set to dull. Under specular, this option controls how shiny a texture is going to be. Again, we're using this as an exterior texture. It's not going to be very shiny. So again, I'm going to have mine set to 0% for shiny. And again, if you did want to adjust the shiny level on it, you could again adjust the dull shiny slider to again control how shiny it's going to be. This will just control if I was to apply a shine to it, so let's just go up to here and we can see how that's already taken effect. But as I adjust the slider, we can see it adjusts how shiny that is going to be. So you can play around with these values, see what's going to work best for you. And we're just going to keep ours set to the defaults of 0. The reflection option allows you to control how reflective the texture is going to be. So again, I can control this. I can slide the slider up and down, and then you can see that it's actually going to show reflections in the actual texture itself. And you can, again, keep those to be sharp, or you can make them a little bit more blurry. Again, play around with it, with the textures to see what's going to work best for the texture you're trying to create. Underneath that, we have an option called IOR. Now, IOR stands for Index of Refraction. This describes the way that light bends when it's crossing the material surface. A value of 1 means that the light will not change in direction. Selecting a material from the drop down, be it air, water, crystal, will show you a different value in the index of refraction edit box. So if I was to select crystal, you would see that the value changes. These are preset values. You can also do a search online if you wanted to for index of refraction, and it will give you the different codes that you can enter in manually. To do that, you would select custom, and then you can type in whatever value that you want. I'm going to keep mine set to air, and we're just going to say OK to that. Now, there's a Fresnel checkbox down here. When this is enabled, the reflection strength becomes dependent on the viewing angle of the surface. So some materials in nature, like glass, reflect light in this manner. Note that the Fresnel effect depends, again, on the index of refraction as well. So these will work hand in hand with each other. Next, we have the Information tab. So back at the very top, we have the Properties tab and the Informations tab. In the Information tab, in here, you can specify an actual usage for that material. I want this material usage to be set to wood. So whenever I'm looking for wood and I'm searching for it, it's going to show up in my list. You can apply an assembly to it as well. So if you wanted to take advantage of quantity information for just the material, you could apply that in here if you needed to. And you can also add in a manufacturer. So if we took this from an actual manufacturer's website and we want this to show up in our reports, or when we hover over top of it, or when we select the material, we can adjust it so that it uses any kind of manufacturer that we have already added in, or you can create your own manufacturer by going in and editing it and adding in a new manufacturer. Adding in a manufacturer, again, will give you the ability to add in the company name itself, its location, and any kind of logo that you want associated with that manufacturer. Once we're happy with everything, we're just going to simply say, OK. And now in our catalog, we're going to have the new Board & Batten Robin's Egg Blue. Now what we're going to do is we're going to apply this Robin's Egg Blue to our model. So I'm just going to say, OK, that's going to save my catalog for me. So I'm going to see that new Robin's Egg Blue as a part of my catalog. And then all we're going to do is apply it to the walls themselves. So once this saves, we'll be able to apply that texture. So now we have our walls added in. I'm just going to go up. I'm going to select my materials paintbrush. I'm going to select the apply to all similar option because I want to make sure that I'm applying this to all of the walls at the same time. And then I'm just going to simply left click once on the wall and it will add in that texture for us. And then we can see how that texture is being added in. Now I can see that it is in the wrong direction. So I'm going to select all similar, right click properties, and under the appearance tab, under the mapping, I can see that it is set to 90-degree rotation. So I'm going to say I don't want it to rotate 90 degrees. I want it to be up and down. And then what that will do is it will now change that texture for us. Here you can see that it's inserted it at 0 and it's gone upwards. And I can see that there is a bit of a transition from the bottom of the material to the top of the material. So we are seeing a bit of a seam here. I can again go back into the properties. Oops, sorry. Select all similar properties. And what I can do from here is I can go into the appearance, and under mapping, I can use the position option to move this texture up or down. So I'm just going to push this a couple of times on my keyboard. Sorry, on my mouse, and then I'm going to say OK. And what that will do is it will move that texture down. So I remove that seam from the texture itself. Now what I can do is I'm going to show you the magenta color. So here we can see that we have our front door. And right now it's showing a frosted glass door in here. I want to apply a different material to the door. So I'm just going to double click on it. I'm going to go to appearance, and under door leaf, instead of using this door leaf, which is using just an ODL door, it is a flat panel that is using an image. So I want to use a decorative door. It's going to use that option. And then what that will do is it will again now apply that texture so we can see through that one area. And then if I go into the actual properties and I go to the appearance and I open that texture up, what it's actually using is a door that has that magenta color. And here it's saying make magenta color transparent. So that way when I add it in, Envisioneer will see it and it will take that magenta color and it will make it invisible. This does need to be edited. I can see that there is an overlap here. And what's happening here is this edge that we're seeing is not exactly 255.0255. So it's seeing it as that magenta color with a slight variation to the RGB value. So we're seeing that magenta in there. So that does need to be cleaned up a bit, but that's why you're seeing that around the edges there. So you're probably seeing a pixel bleed between the white and the magenta, and it again just threw off the RGB value there. So that covers everything that I wanted to discuss in today's class. So I'm going to go over a quick review of what we've covered. And if you do happen to have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and type those in now. And then after I'm done going over the review, I will answer any questions that you may have had. So in today's class, we have learned how to add in custom materials to our catalog. We looked at how to source the materials that you could use from either taking a picture of the texture itself or by finding a texture online and saving it to your computer. We then looked at how to take the saved material and how to edit it so that it maps correctly in Envisioneer. Once the texture is added to Envisioneer, we then looked at how to adjust the properties of the texture to achieve any kind of a photorealistic editing that we needed so that it looks accurate in our renderings. So I'm going to again just pause here for a moment to see if anybody has any questions. I'm not seeing anything at the moment. Again, like I mentioned at the beginning of our class, I will be sending out an email that's going to contain a document that covers everything that we've talked about today. Should you happen to have any questions while going over that document, again, please don't hesitate. You can reach out to our support department and they will be happy to help you out with any questions you may have. All right, perfect. Well, there does not appear to be any questions, so I do want to thank everybody for attending today. I do look forward to speaking with you all again very soon. Thank you very much, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day.